Hello, welcome to today's video. Today I was starting to work on these crown walls, work on the undercarriage, and I realized, this is a perfect opportunity to kind of do a how-to video here. A lot of models don't give you the opportunity to build a tank this way, but there are several that do, and so I figured for those models that where it's possible, I'd show you this technique. And a couple other, I figure any tracked vehicle at all, you can still use some of these ideas on that vehicle. So, if you remember, if you watched my update video, I explained how the top of the vehicle, basically the entire hull, was primed in a gray, Vallejo gray, whereas the lower surfaces of the tank, as well as the entire undercarriage, was primed in black. Now, the real reason you do that is in the scale modeling space, you want to treat the undercarriage, basically the lower half of the tank, as a separate model when it comes to painting. Okay, so that helps you, as you do that, really get a good effect of the weathering and the differences that happen in the environment between the top of the surfaces of the vehicle and the under surfaces. So that's one of the reasons you start with two different color primers and the different treatments of the model. Now, what I've done, obviously, having primed it, went ahead with the second step, which was actually painting up the undercarriage. I figured there's a couple steps I can show you. Now, I heard one of the quotes I found, is researching how to do different types of tracked vehicles and what have you as far as painting. One of my favorite quotes is, when it comes to painting tracks, tracks come in basically two colors. One is rust and dry mud, and rust and wet mud. So, basically what that boils down to is you have a lot of freedom in the way you treat the treads or tracks, but within certain parameters, and it's actually pretty simple to do. So, step one when you're doing the tracks is paint them, prime them black, like I said before. And the first thing you want to do is find your favorite rust color and do a wash on the entire surfaces of rust. Now, I made a wash of my own using Delta's Ceramcoat Iron Oxide Brown mixed with 90% acrylic medium. In my case, I used GW's Lamine medium. So it was a basically a 10% wash, so very, very thin. And went over the entire track assemblies, mostly just on the outside, with the wash. Now, what that did is it got into all the lower recesses where moisture would collect, but not necessarily dust and dirt. Now, yes, wet mud would, but the wet mud would allow the moisture into the joints, but eventually that mud would cake and then fall off as the tracks work through the gears. That gave you basically an undercoat of black with the rust. Now, in my case, it's a pretty dark rust. And then, once that is completely dried, then you go over it and you find your favorite mud color, earth color. In my case, I made my own using flat earth and khaki, from Vallejo. And it was a 2-to-1 mix, 2 flat earth to 1 khaki, and mixed it up. So I've got ready I can do some airbrushing if I want. But for the tracks, I figured no sense in dry brushing, or airbrushing, so I went ahead and dry brushed it. So, keeping them on the sprues to make it easier to hold, I went ahead and applied the dry brush essentially to the entire upper surface, but especially on the parts where they were going to be visible to the outside. And only the surfaces that would be raised off the table. I didn't do anything on the bottom. No sense in wasting paint, right? Then on the inside, you're not going to see any of this because that's the top half of the track. So I didn't do anything there. But down here, I went ahead and applied some dry brushing of that same earth color. Okay. Once that was done, went over to all the undercarriages and painted using German gray all of the tires that were on the model. Okay. The last step was actually a little bit of a kind of a trick. These are modeled in the kit. This is a smaller kit. This is 1/56 scale, not 1/48 or 1/35, where these road wheels would actually be two separate pieces. But here, they're molded as one, which is not the way they actually were. Well, it's very hard to see between the wheels on the model in most cases, especially when the tracks are set in place. You can get a lot of shadow. However, there's a lot of space between these two. So what I did was, see if you can see that there, using black, whereas this is German gray, which is a very dark gray, I actually used black and painted in a line on both this bogie and this road wheel right down the center to give you the visual cue that these are actually two separate wheels. So once the tracks are mounted, the impression of two wheels will be there. Alright. Now, in this particular kit, the way these are designed, you basically would slide, let's see here, these bars here slide perfectly into here. However, what I found out in the process of doing this was that because of the thickness of the track guards here, fenders, it didn't slide in easily. So it took a little bit of finagling. So always try to fit it first and then go back and glue. Okay, so here is the end result. Okay, at this stage, the tank is ready to be weathered, as far as all the base paint coats being down. Now, on this particular tank model, I still have some details to put in, like the headlights, searchlight lenses, and the machine gun parts, as well as decals. But again, now that it's assembled with the base coat of earth by Earth Mix, the road wheel rubber tires, and the initial rust application on the tracks, it's ready to be painted. Okay. Now, the next step, when the reason you do it this way is you don't want to do a full weathering job on these, because you want to make sure that when you weather the entire tank, that the weathering patterns between the hull and the undercarriage are similar. You don't want to do them completely separately and then try to match them together, because the different effects may not match up right. You'll see, when I get around to actually doing the dust application, you're going to have almost a bow wave sort of dust in the front half of the tracks and along the back surface here. You want to be sure that you're matching up, that the bow wave, or if you will, of the on the hull matches the bow wave on the lead trucks or lead bogie road wheels. If you don't do that right, it's not quite going to look right. It won't be too convincing. Now, of course, on a small model like this, it might not be that obvious, but of course, on larger models, it will be much more obvious. So I wanted to kind of give you this quick how-to, because anybody can do it. It's a very convincing way of getting the tank treads done. In fact, you can see how they look right there. They're still dark, but again, they're ready for weathering. Just a matter of applying the proper coats of paint. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that. At least now I've got one of my tanks pretty much ready for the tabletop, as far as 3-color paint minimum kind of thing. Looking forward to playing with it, but looking forward to completing these things too. Alright, so that's the quick video. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned, and the next video will show you an update of all the 3 tanks ready for the decal job. Alright, thank you very much. Stick with me. Go ahead and share, like, subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to my new subscribers who've joined recently, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.